you had claimed you felt inflation was, at that point, transitory. Do you still believe that today?
So,
very short, please.
I think when I use the word transitory, I was thinking that it's related to the pandemic, and that when the pandemic goes away, that will make a big difference.
Do you still believe it's transitory?
That. I believe that the pandemic, unfortunately, has been and will be longer lasting than I anticipated.
So you still, basically you're saying the pandemic is still happening, therefore that's why we're still seeing inflation.
Well, I think that's one of the contributors to it.
Okay. All right. So let me get into the meat of what we need to talk about here about what's happening in international situations. I am pleased, and Madam Chair, thank you for including my legislation in 16 bills that were actually noticed for this hearing today. And I had a bill, the Russian Sovereign Debt Prohibition Act, which was noticed. And this bill would simply prohibit U.S. financial institutions from financing Russian sovereign debt, regardless of the date a bond was issued, extending the Biden administration's current restrictions on new bonds that are being issued. And I know that it was supposed to be considered in the March markup. Something happened and somehow it fell off. We have a committee, I think, are trying to do everything we can to tighten those restrictions. And I respectfully ask that the chairwoman include that legislation in the next package of bills that we might consider. Yesterday, I reintroduced another bill that I had previously called the No U.S. Financing for Iran Act, a bill that would effectively prevent U.S. financial institutions from engaging with the government of Iran while prohibiting both the IMF and the Export-Import Bank from providing them financing. Specifically, my bill would prohibit the exchange of special drawing rights, and it's similar to what my colleague, Mr. Hill, has worked on regarding Russia. Secretary Yellen, can you certify that the Biden administration will oppose the exchange of Iran's SDRs, those special drawing rights, with any country, even if the administration concludes a new nuclear agreement with Tehran?
Well, Iran has not been able to use its special drawing rights. The United States would not exchange SDRs for dollars, nor have our partners, and I don't see that changing.
You commit, okay, so you commit to continuing that.
Well, we'll have to see what happens if they sign a bill, but I have no.
Well, that's a different answer than we have no intention to.
There's no change in U.S. policy. We have not been willing to in any way aid Iran in using its SDRs, and I don't envision that changing.
Okay. Well, in Washington Post had an article over the weekend saying that Tehran has demanded that we lift the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps' designation as a foreign terrorist organization. That same article quoted a high-ranking Iranian official who said effectively an agreement to revive the nuclear deal with the U.S. is close. Do you think that's a fair assessment, first of all? And as you know, President Trump had put in that original designation back in 2019. It's still heavily sanctioned, and there has been some enforcement actions. But there's also been some designations that have been lifted. Does the Biden administration continue to believe that the Revolutionary Guard is a foreign terrorist organization?
They are designated as such. There are active negotiations taking place over the JCPOA, but I can't comment on the details of what's happening in those. I don't believe I can or should.
Okay, so you may have that knowledge, but you're not able to share it.
I am not deeply involved in the details of those negotiations.
All right. Have you or anyone else at Treasury been directed to reduce Iranian sanctions enforcement so as to not interfere with those Vienna talks?
We haven't changed our sanctions.
That's not my question. That's not my question. Have you been instructed to or requested to? You may have ignored it. I guess that's what I'm trying to find out.
There's been no change in any administration policy, to the best of my knowledge.
And I'll follow up with some written questions as well. I appreciate that.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Vargas, is now recognized. for 5 minutes.